Hey, it's Rohit Bhargava. Welcome to the Non-Obvious Virtual Summit on Book Marketing. I am very, very excited to be sharing with you today all sorts of insights. This is going to be kicking off a full day of, in fact, more than a full day of content, because every 15 minutes throughout the day today, we're going to be releasing a new interview with a different expert on a different element of book marketing. And to kick things off today, what I'm going to do is take you through the launch plan and everything that we did for Non-Obvious Megatrends, which was my latest book that came out in January. And for this program, really what I started thinking about is, where am I going to start? Like, where should I start this talk when it comes to book marketing? And it's easy to think, okay, I'm going to start with launch. But what I thought I'd do is give you a little bit of the full picture. And so for the next 45 minutes, basically what I'm going to do is take you through all of the different phases of launching this book. And there were 5 specific phases. And the first place that I'm going to start is with the introduction, and the overview for essentially how we started thinking about this whole program. And so let me start with that and give you a little bit of the background behind how Non-Obvious, the entire summit kind of came together, and also like how this book came together. And the first thing that I wanted to share is something that I often tell people when it comes to marketing. And this is kind of probably the biggest mistake that I see people make when it comes to not just book marketing, but any type of marketing, which is they focus on what I call a chicken strategy. And a chicken strategy is essentially, imagine if you had a restaurant and you were trying to create a great experience. You wouldn't focus on a strategy around one dish, a chicken dish. That's not how restaurants work. They have a whole experience. They've totally had to transform their experience now because of the pandemic. But restaurants are trying to create more than just one great dish. And when it comes to marketing, a lot of times people think, okay, I need a Facebook strategy, I need a Twitter strategy, I need an Amazon strategy. And essentially, that's the same thing as making a chicken strategy. And that's not what you want to do. So, the first big tip that I wanted to share is, do not start with a chicken strategy. Start with something bigger, start with something broader. That's super, super important, because if you don't do that, you're already lining yourself up for failure, because you're only focusing on this piece and that piece, and you're getting super tactical without thinking about how all of these things fit together. So that's the first big thing. And what we're talking about here is really getting to launch, getting to this point of launch. And before you do that, one of the things you'll see in many of the different talks and interviews throughout the summit is a lot of people will talk about platform. They'll say, look, before are able to launch a book effectively, you've got to be able to build a platform. And when it comes to building a platform, there's a couple things that I've been thinking about. And I'll do this by kind of giving you a little bit of the background behind this book, which is a little bit unique from maybe other books, because this is the last in a series, a 10-year long series of books. And for me, this journey towards the Non-Obvious brand started back in 2011 when I published a PowerPoint presentation about trends. And at that point, it wasn't even called Non-Obvious, but it was super popular because people wanted to read about trends. And so uh, what you're seeing here is some of the branding behind what it used to look like. So this is kind of before we had a brand, but I started to build an audience. And the audience started because people wanted to read about trends. And for me, that was where the journey kind of started back in 2011 when I published this report. And I did it again in 2012. And I was getting, for each one of these, hundreds of thousands of people downloading this presentation, commenting on it, sharing it, and liking it. And I realized that there was something there. And so in 2013, I turned it into an ebook. And at that point, I did a rebrand. And the rebrand sort of took what we had and said, we're going to change the branding of this so that essentially we are calling it something specific. And the specific thing that I started to call it was the Non-Obvious Trend Report. That's kind of how it started. And in 2013 and 2014, it was an ebook that I just published straight onto Amazon. And from there, essentially, I moved on to uh, create a book out of it. And what I thought I'd do is show you the process behind not only making a book out of it, but also turning it into a cover that we loved. And I thought, what better way to do that than to show you some of the covers that we rejected. And so when we went through this cover design process, these were some of the covers that we didn't select, as well as the one on the far right is the one that we did select. And I could go into a lot of detail on like why we chose one versus the other, but what I really liked about the cover that we ended up picking was this really iconic light bulb slash balloon image. And I just kind of fell in love with that. And I thought that was a really unique visual and the color scheme worked for me. And so I ended up kind of going with that and picking it. And in 2015, it launched as a full length book. And from there, it sort of took off and hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list that time. And so beyond that, I said, well, I've been doing this every year as an e-report. So now I should start doing it and continue doing it uh, as a annual book. And so I did something a little bit crazy that, by the way, most publishers would never allow you to do, which is I took the same book and I published a different version of it every year. In fact, let me show you kind of what. Let me do a little bit of a show and tell here. I have them down here. So, the first version was this non-obvious kind of book here, and then it went into the 2016 version. And the 2016 version, the big problem with this version was it didn't look different because the 2016 was really small up in the corner and people didn't realize it was a different book. So that was a little bit of a mistake there. So then we went into 2017 and you can see that it's kind of huge on the cover. So you know that it's a new book. You know that 2017 is different. But at that point, it wasn't entirely clear to a lot of people that it was all about trends because the subtitle didn't say trends in it. So this new version has the word trends in the subtitle, and it's got a little indicator up here saying there's 15 new trends in the middle of it because every year there was a new version of the book that had 15 trends. 2019 was this version. And then the final version, the 10-year anniversary version, which you may or may not be able to see this, it's kind of like a little bit holographic on the cover there, was Non-Obvious Megatrends. And that's the launch that I want to talk to you about today and kind of take you inside of to really show you how that worked. But it was a 10-year progression to get to this. So, that's an important background, I think, just to share with you like how this whole thing kind of went. I think the other important piece is just to illustrate that this was turning into a brand. And I realized it pretty early because I'm a brand and marketing guy. And I knew that I wanted to make it a bigger brand. And so what I decided to do was take this idea of a book and the title of a book and own it. And what that meant for me was that I had to get the URL. And so there was somebody kind of sitting on that URL. And I wanted to kind of make sure and get it. So I paid way more than I should have, and I got it. So I got nonobvious.com. And then I went and trademarked the term non-obvious for various categories that related to me. And then I built out a bunch of these other things. So I had the URL at that point. I had all the pieces of the puzzle. And for me, like that was basically what I needed in order to kind of feel like I could own this thing. And then I started expanding it. So we launched a book awards program that we did every year where we evaluated the best and most interesting books of the year. And by the way, if you have a book and you want to submit it for the 2020 version of those awards, I'll show you how to do that closer to the end of the presentation. So you can definitely check that out. Now, the other thing that you'll be able to do is you can basically take all of these pieces and look at how we started to inject more personality into this. So essentially what we did was we took this brand of Non-Obvious. We turned it into a couple of different things, and we started to have some fun with it. We basically launched the Non-Obvious candy collection. So that was like one of the fun things that we did that kind of took this further and took it to the next piece and just injected a little bit of personality into this. The other thing that we did, which was kind of fun, that we launched as part of our basically as part of our marketing for the consulting side of the business, is we took this and we went out to conferences and we started doing this as a giveaway. And one of the giveaways that we did was essentially something where we went out and we said, we are going to give you this gift. And the gift was kind of fun. It was basically a tweezer that had this tagline on it, and it said, "Non-obvious workshops raise eyebrows." And it was this really fun kind of demonstration of doing something interesting and different that brought to life the non-obvious brand in a different way. And that was like a totally different thing. It was an interesting way of doing it, and it really stood out for people. And so one of the things that we did after that is we went in and we kind of expanded that. We expanded the personality, and my wife and I did this book that we called the Non-Obvious book. And this was an April Fool's Day joke, but people actually thought it was real. A lot of people, and it was, again, it was just another way of building the brand and taking the brand to that next level, and allowing people to kind of see that we had some personality. And all of these things were the foundation for the brand, for the book. And moving beyond that, kind of into the next phase, this is when we kind of got into the writing and the research phase of this. And if some of you have seen me do any of my keynotes or my talks about this process, I call it the Haystack Method. And the Haystack Method for me is essentially 5 steps that I use for doing the research around the book. And for anybody who's kind of thinking about writing a book or going through that research process, I thought this would be kind of interesting. So very quickly, I'm going to take you through what that process looks like for me. And so the first step here is really gathering information, gathering insights, ripping stories out of magazines. I'm a big magazine lover, and I often read magazines that aren't targeted to me. That's one of my techniques to try and be more open-minded, which is kind of what the non-obvious brand stands for. And there's lots and lots of books that I have on my bookshelf here. And when I'm reading all these books, I'm saving these little tabs in order to save interesting insights so that I can return to them later. I'm always sorting through all of these ideas and aggregating them into various clusters. I'm elevating them to try and come up with bigger ideas. And this is my office. So you can kind of see, like, right now you're watching me in this office, but this is kind of the flip view of it. So you can see what my desk and everything looks like in the office. And when this stuff comes together, this is what all of the different pieces look like. So this is kind of what all the elements are. Then I go through this naming process where I name the trends and put the pieces together. And finally, I go through this process where I prove them out. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you, just to illustrate what this looks like, is a very quick time-lapse video of what the process looks like. And so let me share this time-lapse video with you, and then we can talk about it. So let me just put this up on screen. So here, what you're looking at is me going through this process of saving all of these various ideas, putting them into categories. So aggregating them into categories based on what they are related to, and then elevating the thinking to try and come up with bigger categories, to come up with bigger ideas. And so all of these pieces, all of these ideas are elevated into a single theme. And in this case, the theme was a trend that I called truthing. And truthing was a trend that described how, in a world where we don't know what to trust, we basically turn inwards and trust ourselves. Then it turns into an outline, and the outline turns into a chapter in the book. So that's super quickly kind of the process that I use, and that's the way that it kind of outlined. But the other thing that I think many of you who are watching will find interesting is the editorial process. So the editorial process for me involved 4 different editors, 10 cycles, and really cutting the manuscript down and revising it over and over again. So I used developmental editors, multiple copy editors, proofreaders, and then it moves into layout. And so not everybody's book is the same. Your process may be totally different than this, but I thought it'd be interesting to just share, like, that's what the process looked like for me. And it involved bringing many different experts in on various levels in order to get the book to be really as good as I wanted it to be. So that's kind of the inside look at the process behind it. So now, as we're progressing through this book marketing phase, I know I haven't talked that much about marketing yet, because I wanted to give you the foundation for all of the things that go into making a book successful, in my experience, before you even get to that point where you're starting to market it. But now, let's say you've got the book, you've got the early manuscript of the book, and you can start to engage people in it. So at this point, one of the big things that people ask me about is, well, what about endorsements? What about, like, cover blurbs? How do you get famous people to like your book and write a testimonial for it? And, we've written a whole guide for Idea Press authors on how to do this. And one of the things I share with all of our authors is that the best way, in my experience, to think about getting blurbs and testimonials is the same way that maybe you might remember applying to college. You would apply to some schools that you would easily get into. You'd apply to some schools that you probably would, but you might not. And then you'd have like your stretch schools that you probably won't get into, but you're still going to try because it'd be great if you did. And that's one of the ways to think about how to approach the people that could do a blurb and testimonial for you. Put people into each of those categories. And then it's super important also, I believe, to make sure that you have enough diversity in that group of people that you're going out to, both ethnic diversity, gender diversity, and career diversity as well. I mean, you don't want 6 authors on your back cover because there's no diversity of experience there. You want a combination of authors, maybe professors, maybe people who are in the media. I mean, like people in lots of different places. That's what you want so that you can uh, demonstrate that the book is widely appealing instead of just that one type of person will like it. So I want to just pause there. I'm seeing lots and lots of comments come in from many good friends. It is looking so positive. I see like so many people here. So thank you so much to everybody for joining. When I was putting this together, I realized that I have so much content that I want to share with you that I want to rock through this thing. So I'm not going to spend that much time kind of looking at the comments. I love that they're coming up here and that I'm seeing all of these things. And thank you so much. I'm going to go back and watch it and be like, oh man, I wish I said hi to all of you. But I want to make this as valuable as I can in the short period of time that we have together. So let's keep rocking with this. If you're with me so far, let's keep rocking. The next thing we did beyond sort of taking all those pieces is we launched a launch team. And one of the interviews that you'll find in the summit is where I interview a friend of mine named Jesse Tevelo, who basically ran this launch team for us. And the beautiful thing about the launch team was it allowed me to go out to some of these early readers, people who were already fans of mine, people who'd already read early versions of the book, and engage them in a deeper way. And so what we ended up doing is we created a whole community for this launch team. We started sending them emails. We also brought them into a Facebook private community that we called the Non-Obvious Launch Team. And inside of this Non-Obvious Launch Team, I really just tried to be super authentic with what was happening. And so here's a couple of images. So the image on the left is me taking a picture of my computer and basically what I had on my computer screen when I was doing a podcast, which was the word crossed out as a reminder that I shouldn't say And right next to it is a picture of a video that my wife took when the book arrived. And we've got our Christmas tree up because it arrived in December. And it's a unboxing video. So it's me unboxing and looking at the book for the first time and then sharing that with the community. And then my son's there kind of looking at the book and talking about it as well. So all of these things are really, really authentic ways of just taking people inside that experience, because it's a big deal. I mean, I've written now 7 books, but every time you open that package up and you look at that book for the first time, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Like that never gets old, no matter how many books you do. It's just such a beautiful moment. And I hope if you're thinking about writing your first book, you're going to have that moment at some point. And it's awesome. I mean, anybody who's written a book will tell you that is a beautiful, beautiful moment. The other thing we started doing in this group, and my wife was really, really good at this. She started engaging people in the group with conversation. She asked them for their opinion. So we were about to do kind of these branded socks, non-obvious socks, which I think I have a visual of at some point. And so like where I was asking about the tagline we should use for that. Or we were asking people about bookstores because we did this whole program around a really cool, unique scavenger hunt for independent bookstores, which again, I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. So like we're seeding all of these ideas, we're deciding what to do. And we've got this beautiful community of, I think at the point when we were kind of getting close to launch, we ended up with, I think almost 800 people in this community. So it was a decent sized private community. And these are people who have actively raised their hand and said, I want to be part of this. I want to look at the book early. I want to engage with this thing. Like I'm super interested in this. These aren't just people who we blasted off for emails and said, hey, click this box if you want to get something for free, like get our free white paper download. Like, no, that wasn't this. These were people who I didn't even offer an incentive beyond just saying, hey, you're going to get insider content, which I guess technically, I guess that is an incentive. But I didn't say, here, download this thing and therefore you can join. What we were really looking for was people who were engaged. And in fact, one of the things we asked people was, tell us something non-obvious about yourself. And we continue to do that now in that community, which we've actually changed into the Non-Obvious Nation community, which I'll again kind of share a little bit later. But we found such amazing, interesting things. I mean, we've got in that community, like I know Chubby usually, like, she puts out these messages about like what people have shared, and it's just really, really interesting what they've done and what they talk about. And so many of them, you wouldn't believe, so many of them say, one thing no one else knows about me is, and then they talk about that. And it's really, really cool. It's really interesting to get that. The other thing that I think really was meaningful for people is when I would send them these things, I would send them these personal notes, these handwritten notes. So I would send them a handwritten note with the book. And before the book even was printed, one of the interesting things we found is one of the people actually on the launch team, she posted a photo of the book and she was reading it on the beach, and it was a printout of the book that she'd literally printed out and put into like a 3-ring binder because she wanted to like show what she was reading, and she was reading it just as kind of like a printout. And that was just like this really cool thing where I'm like, wow, people are taking this content and they're just consuming it however they want. Sometimes they're reading the book, sometimes they read it digitally on their phone, and sometimes they literally print it out and stick it in a 3-ring binder and take it to the beach. I mean, how cool is that? The other thing that I started doing in this launch team was offering gifts to people. And I saw, Eric, I saw your question about, what else did people in the launch team get? They got a lot of the insider content, but we also had little contests for them throughout. So we said, hey, whoever like comes up with the best idea for this, or actually we had a bunch of digital ads and we put them out there, and some of them were edgier than others. And we asked people to vote and help us figure out like which ads are we going to pick, which ads are we going to use. And then we started sending people gifts, and they came back with all these comments saying, look what arrived, like, check out this thing that I got, it's so cool, it's so awesome, I'm so excited. Like, and we would say like winners will be picked at random, and then they get this whole stack of books, because like, remember, I have these stack of all of these books that I can send to people, the full set with like signed copies and all of this other stuff. And so we had things to send to them, and it was really meaningful for people because they could get them. And by the way, this is one of those places where we engaged our kids. So our kids would help to mail out all of this stuff. So there's Jaden kind of in the back. You can sort of see him. And I'm handwriting notes and sticking these all in the envelopes, and then we're actually sending them out. So this wasn't a warehouse production where I would tell 3 assistants to go off and send this stuff. Like, I'm sitting there handwriting these things, and then my 10-year-old son, or actually 12-year-old son now, is like sticking them in envelopes, and then we're taking them to the mailbox ourselves. I mean, that's what we were doing to try and engage this early group. The other thing we did early is we lined up a bunch of reviews from the industry, and there's many different platforms where you can do this. Some of them are paid, some of them are not paid. But when you start to get some of these reviews, they're not Amazon reviews. They're reviews that go out into the industry that are meaningful for the industry. And what you find is that that leads you into this next phase, which is really the pre-marketing and the channel sales. And this is where your publisher starts to become important. And one of the big things that people say a lot, which is true, is publishers don't do marketing. And what I tell my authors when they come to Idea Press is, we're not going to do your marketing. So the difference between what we talk about and what others talk about is that we don't bullshit, right? Because I'm an author first, and I've seen what happens when you do that. And so instead of doing that, I say, look, this is what we're going to focus on. And I want to take you inside, just like, what should a publisher actually be doing for marketing? And what should you be doing? Because I think that's a really interesting distinction that a lot of times people don't get. And so they set themselves up for disappointment. So one of the things that I did as an author to help the publishing side is I put together materials that they could use easily to sell in the book. So just a very quick tutorial on how this works. So you have distributors, you have publishers, and then you have retailers. And what's going on usually is the publishers are trying to get the books into retail. The distributors are representing those books. And so it's really valuable to give them as much material as they can use to help them more easily sell in the book. So sell sheets, like for example, this sell sheet here, that includes the details that they care about, the ISBN number, the price point, bookmarks, shelf talkers, which are those little things that go on shelves, like videos that you pre-record that explain why the book is unique, why it's different. I mean, that's really, really valuable stuff because it helps them understand why your book is going to move. The other thing is the channel sales in various verticals that are meaningful. So, for example, colleges, libraries. There was a huge event that, as Idea Press, we went and represented all of our books at, called the FYE conference, which is the first year experience conference. So this is the conference for all of the universities that are deciding what the one book that all of their incoming freshmen will read. So when you get a deal from one of those, you sell thousands of books at once, which is amazing. So as a publisher, they're going to these trade shows and being able to do that. So, and I see, Erica, great question on the reviews. Many of those reviews for the reputable kind of the big four, which are Booklist, Library Journal, Kirkus, and Publishers Weekly, those usually need to go out between 3 to 4 months ahead of your pub date. That's when they expect to get them. But they all have them kind of indicated on their site, so you can sort of see the process. Some of them are applied to from the publisher. Some of them, as an author, you can apply to. And when you go to Kirkus, you have a model where you can go for a free review and then a paid review as well. So there's paid versus free versions. And the paid one is you're not paying for a good review. You're paying to guarantee that they review it. And then what happens is they'll do the review and then they'll share it with you. And you can decide whether it's good and you want to publicize it, or whether you would rather they just not publicize it. And then they'll just not hit the publish button. So you're not guaranteed a good review, but you do get some level of control. So that's kind of how that process works. The other thing is there's lots of trade opportunities. So with the ABA, which Idea Press is a member of as a publisher, we have white box and red box mailings, which are mailings that go out to independent bookstores with either the book or materials about the book to every month, so that they can learn about those. And then there's a indie bound newsletter that goes out as well. There's trade publications like the Ingram Advance catalog, and we did a whole spread with an interview around the book. And this is me kind of covered in Post-it notes, which was this fun photo shoot that we did for one of the things that we put out there. These are all things that happen on the publisher level to get the book out there into the sales channel. The other thing I did in this pre-sales phase is I did photo shoots. And so these are some of the photo shoots kind of related to the time. So because I was launching the book in January, it was right after the holiday season, I was doing holiday promotion. So here's a picture of like the elf with the books kind of sitting there, right? We also did this photo shoot. So this like crazy photo shoot with the Post-it notes. And yes, that's me actually wearing Post-it notes kind of head to toe. And here's some of the lesser seen photos out there of me kind of in this whole photo shoot. So this is me kind of covered with those in the way that they set the Post-it wall up. So those are all Post-it notes that they actually put on the wall. So that took a while to set up. This is me sort of getting covered with the Post-it notes and hoping to escape. And of course, I've got to read my New York Times and have my coffee from my Minion mug. And so that's me doing that too. And oh, by the way, I have to watch Black Mirror because that's like the show that anybody who talks about the future has to watch. And so there I am taking a little break. The other thing I did is I went to Fiverr, which many of you know, and I paid basically $5 for a bunch of 3D images of my book, just to give me more visuals to use for marketing. And what you can see here is that you kind of get a mixed bag. I mean, if you take a close look at these, some of them are okay. Some of them are charismatically stupid. I mean, there's like one where the book is broadcast as if it's like on in the middle of Times Square, but it looks totally fake. There's another one where it kind of looks super fake in a totally empty train station, like a subway. So like you get a mixed bag. Like some of them look totally fake, some of them look good, but altogether it's just more materials to use. It's more marketing assets. The other thing we did is we got really aggressive and creative with giveaways, with fun swag. And so, you know, we did lots of different swag where we basically had stuff that we put together. Some of it we used for South by Southwest. Some of it was like magnets and stuff that we did. And we kind of brought all this stuff together because we just wanted to have fun. We wanted to give people fun things to use, fun things to be able to kind of play with. We did these head to toe socks that were super, super yellow. And of course, we had banana slicers, because if you've seen me present on stage, you know that one of the stories that I tell is about banana slicers. And what I talk about with these banana slicers is that they have thousands of reviews on Amazon, including this one. Does this work with Brazilian bananas better than ones from Italy? To which someone responded, I'd be happy to help if you could tell me what type of bananas you mean. Are we talking about Tuscany bananas or Neapolitan bananas? I mean, another review talks about how the banana slicer like saved their marriage. And one really irate person gives it 1 star with like super angry language, in all caps, of course, saying this banana slicer does not work because all my bananas curve the opposite direction. So people are getting super creative with this banana slicer, and it's a fun story, and it talks about kind of community and people trying to outdo each other with creativity. And it's a great giveaway. And so I've bought them in bulk, and I have stacks and stacks of them. I think that Hutzler, the company that makes them, probably thinks I have a retail store. But it's fun, you know, and we want to have fun with these things. Like, we want to have fun with these giveaways. So again, all of this stuff is pre-marketing, pre-channels, like talking about building the community, talking about building the brand. And now at phase 5, we are at book launch. So now we're ready to actually launch the book. And I've spent half an hour talking about the lead up to it. And I think that's intentional, because what you'll find is that when it comes to getting ready for a launch like this, you will spend a lot of time prepping, and you should, because that's how it leads into a successful book launch. So now we're at launch phase. Let's talk about some of the things we did there. I wanted one visual to encompass the entire marketing strategy. And the way I described it to people was, imagine filling as many ping pong balls in your mouth as you possibly can. Like, that's kind of what we tried to do with this launch strategy. But then I started Google image searching for like photos of people with ping pong balls in their mouth, and that did not go well. That wasn't good. So I chose the suitcase instead, because it was like a better visual to talk about this. But like, all of these different pieces of the puzzle, right? Like, this was the whole campaign, and I know you can't see that. So I'm going to take you through each of these elements of it. But like, really what we were thinking about is like, how do all of these pieces fit together? And remember, what I started with is, you don't want a chicken strategy, right? You don't want to focus on like, what's my tactic on Facebook? What's my tactic on here? What's my tactic on there? That's not the way to do this, right? You want to focus on how all of these things fit together. So let's take a look at how these things fit together. And as with any good marketing strategy, it's got to start with knowing who your audience is. Now, I'm one of the guys who's come from the world of marketing. I spent many years at Ogilvy. I was in the world of advertising. I've seen lots of consumer research. And so there's multiple ways to do this. You could segment your audience. And so for a book like Nonobvious, which is about trends and thinking different, the obvious audience, would be people who've read the book before, people who are interested in trends and the future and forecasting, business strategists, and then also, I thought, kind of lovers of science fiction, because they're used to imagining the future. And so they would want to be part of this. The other way to think about your audience is something I did for one of the guidebooks that I wrote. And I'll talk about the non-obvious guides a little bit later. And this is to do a persona. And a persona is a description of an audience as if they're a person. And that's what this talks about, which is the time-starved doer. And then this whole description kind of goes off on what the time-starved doer is. So know your audience is the point of this. The next thing that is important to focus on, just because it's the biggest place where people will find out about your book, is Amazon. You want to have a great Amazon page. You want to focus on having the metadata look as good as it possibly can. You want to have as much formatting as you can. And look, I'll tell you, the truth is, this is super frustrating for everyone in the industry, because when it's wrong, we're trying to fix it. It takes weeks sometimes to get it fixed. So it can be a long haul, frustrating process. But when you finally get it there, you'll have the formatting the way you want. There's features like from the publisher, which is what you're looking at on the right-hand side of the screen, which a publisher can put in, which are these big images in a specific size. So that can be part of your Amazon listing. There's creative things you can do that you just have to kind of look at as an author and then push your publisher to do. So for example, for the Non-Obvious series, one of the things I realized is that Harry Potter had a page where you could see all of the Harry Potter books. And so we pushed to get a page for all of the Non-Obvious books. So now there's a page on Amazon where you can see the full series, which took an insanely long amount of time to actually get working. But finally, we got it working. We wanted to get a ton of Amazon reviews also. In fact, we had a super ambitious goal with the launch team. And one of the goals of the launch team was to get lots of people to review the book in the first week. And so our goal for the first week was to get 100 reviews in 7 days, which anybody who's launched a book knows is really challenging to do, because people will always say, oh, I'll do the review, and then they don't quite get around to it. People get busy, and you have to have enough people who have read the book ahead of your launch week in order to be able to write a review and not just have it be bullshit, right? Because you want them to write a review based on having read the book, not based on just being your buddy and saying, hey, this book is great, 5 stars, you know? And so that was super important. And because we had such a strong launch team, we pushed that launch team really hard. They showed up because they'd gotten so many different pieces to get engaged with this ahead of time. And at the end of launch week, at the end of 7 days, I think we had just over 100 reviews, like 106 reviews, which was amazing because we hit our target. And that was a great, great program. And it was all super detailed in the process of how we manage that, in terms of all the communications and all of the different things. That's part of a campaign that we specifically did in order to make sure that that would happen. The other thing we did is we extended this out to other platforms. So on Goodreads, which many of you know as a platform for readers owned by Amazon, but still kept with a different brand, you can do a giveaway. So we did a Goodreads giveaway, and this giveaway was you could get a free copy of the book, and we gave away 50 copies. And we had, let me see, 1,120 people request the books. So tons of engagement, all because people wanted a free copy of the book. We went deep into the Instagram community, the hashtag Bookstagram community, of all of these people who read books, who love books, who share them with their audience. And any of these posts tend to get hundreds and sometimes even thousands of likes because they're really tapped into their audience. And I see a question here. Does it matter if they're a verified buyer? It does. So Amazon reviews, man, I could do a whole session just on Amazon reviews, but a couple of super quick things. Do not get anyone who has the same last name as you to write a review, because they will note that that's probably family and they'll start kicking that out and flag it. Try to get people who are writing reviews to buy the book, because then it shows up with a little check saying they're verified buyers, which Amazon treats as more valid reviews. Try and get as many of them as you can, because Amazon will filter out some of them, and it's super frustrating why, but it takes a while for them to post. So that's super important as well. Let's see what else. Ask other questions if you have them. Yeah, and I definitely, I would say, try and get as many reviews as you can. And as my friend and fellow Idea Press author Todd Capone says, do not stress if they're not all 5 stars. I got a 1-star review where someone said, the text of the review literally, I wish I brought the screen grab of it, but it literally said, this book was excellent, loved it. And then they gave it 1 star. Now, sometimes people are too stupid to use the internet. Like, you can't help that. What are you going to do? But when someone goes to your book and they read, 1-star reviews, like, one of the natural human tendencies is, let me see who hated this book. And they click on that 1-star review and they see somebody raving about the book. You tell me, is that good or is that bad? I would argue that's good, because they see a 1-star review and it's somebody who actually loved the book. That's like a little landmine of goodness that's sitting there just behind a 1-star review. I mean, that's great stuff. Great stuff. The other thing we did is we used all of these social media platforms that we had. So we built up a huge community on Facebook. We were live streaming there. We were posting lots of different things. And it was really good stuff. I see another question here. Like, can you hack the buy requirement if you give back the cost to reviewers? You can, but if you get caught, then it's not a good thing. So I wouldn't advise it. There's probably a way to do that. I mean, people do that all the time with like books and bestsellers. And by the way, some of the other talks during this summit are going to focus specifically on like running the bestseller lists, trying to hit them, what it takes to do that. So like, you're going to get a lot of content specifically about that. So It's definitely gonna work. Gotham, good to see. It says, does a free download in the first week count as a verified buyer? It will say verified if they downloaded it and then reviewed it. So it should say, I'm pretty sure it should say that. Maybe somebody can correct me if they do. Do the reviews matter if they're ebooks or hard copy? Nope. They all get aggregated together. So whether they read the Kindle version or the hardcover or the audiobook, they get aggregated together. And even the international reviews get aggregated too, if it comes from like Amazon UK or Amazon, one of the other countries of Amazon. Wow, we're gonna like rock through these questions too. Like you guys are bringing some good ones. So prioritize getting the review in advance from someone getting the book for free or getting a verified review. What's more important? Verified reviews will show up more consistently and get filtered less frequently. It's kind of a judgment call, but I mean that's a fact. So if it's verified, it's going to get filtered less frequently. Let's see. Launching a free book in advance. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah. And you guys, I mean, some of you, one of the nice things about this is some of you know me and you know the process that we went through. And we have a bunch of Idea Press authors who are listening in as well. So like, if you guys have answers to some of these questions, like please jump in because I'm afraid I won't be able to rocket through all of this stuff. And I've never been the kind of speaker that's like, hold that question. I just want to get through the content. But like, there's so much good stuff that I don't want to miss out on that. So I'm going to keep rolling with this. I'll try and jump back and get as many questions as I can. If you're registered for our sort of backstage conversation after this, we're going to continue talking about that. And if you post the questions in social media, I'll come back kind of later on today and I'll answer them in social media if I don't get to it now. So I will definitely do that. The other thing we did from social media perspectives, we used LinkedIn. So LinkedIn for me specifically was sharing a lot of articles. So I would write articles that were related to the content of the book, and then I would share those out. And that was kind of the big way of using LinkedIn. And then Twitter, I would have to truthfully say my entire Twitter strategy involved changing the header on my Twitter feed. And that was about it. I personally find there's just like so much noise on Twitter. And I know that there are some diehard Twitter people who are like, oh my God, you didn't use Twitter. You've got 30,000+ people following you there and you're connected to all these people and Barack Obama follows you. And I'm like, that's great. But like, am I going to spam Barack with a DM about my book? Like, what am I going to do? Like, it just didn't feel authentic to me. And I dislike the platform overall, which is why I tend to tweet pretty infrequently anyway. So for me, I'm on Twitter. I have a following there. I sometimes post stuff. I don't feel bad if every post that I make there is self-promotional because I'm not really paying attention to that. It's just me. So I didn't really use Twitter that much. Is it a missed opportunity? Maybe, but look, this whole presentation is about the truth, right? So I'm not going to make up something and say, yeah, I used it super strategically and I was super smart. Like I didn't do anything on Twitter and I'm okay with it. The other thing that was hugely impactful for me is I started doing trading speaking gigs for large bulk sales. And so what I would say to someone who was going to hire me to come and speak is buy X number of books, we'll send them out to your people. And then I was holding those sales so that I could then send them out. And this is part of the bestseller strategy that you'll see a lot of people do, because if you're going to hit a bestseller list, you have to aggregate a lot of sales and you have to make them all happen within the first week. And so this was one of the ways to do that. And I went out to people who were clients of mine and they became champions within their organization for the book. I started trading some speaking gigs for lots of book sales. And then I lined it all up because I did want with this book to hit the bestseller list. That was one of the goals of this. So we lined it all up. And then we also made sure to distribute it to independent bookstores. So rather than taking all those bulk sales and saying, I'm just going to send them to one or two retailers or to Amazon, which they don't count in the same way, I found independent bookstores through the list that Idea Press has and figured out which ones report to BookScan, which is the industry standard kind of reporting service. And then we sent bulk sales through each one of these stores to a certain volume that went out to all of these different people. So we basically spread the sales out across the entire country. In addition to that, we launched this really unique program that we called the Great Nonobvious Scavenger Hunt. And what this involved was going to 150 bookstores and getting one copy of the book into each of the stores and then running a scavenger hunt where people could register and win a copy of the book, but they had to go into the bookstore to get it. So they win it for free, but they'd have to go into the bookstore. So now all of these independent bookstores were getting this foot traffic from people who would walk in saying, "Hey, I won this book. I'm so excited about it." And they'd walk in with a golden ticket. That was part of the campaign. And the golden ticket was holding the person's book under the name Al Bunbury, which, if you've ever read The Importance of Being The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, you know that Al Bunbury is an invented character in that play. It's an invented character that the characters in the play go and see anytime they want to have an escape from their real lives. And so Al Bunbury was perfect for us because it was an invented name that we could put all the name of the books under. So we gave people this golden ticket. We said, take the ticket, go into the store, and ask for your book. And people did. And then they started posting on social media. And there was all of this beautiful action happening because people were just super engaged with this. Like, they were all about it. And it was really, really great. And it was really, really cool. We had lots of orders in lots of different stores. I think that we had pickups in probably about 70% of the stores. So some stores we had in kind of more obscure areas, or just nobody claimed it. So with the remainder of the books that we had already ordered that were already sitting behind the shelf, we went to the bookstores and said, look, if you can donate it, that'd be awesome. And so sometimes they would, I saw a question about libraries. Sometimes they would donate it to the local library. Sometimes they would donate it to kind of a customer. But it was just like a really cool way of following through on that whole campaign. The other thing we did around launch is we did lots of launch events, but to support those launch events, we did radio buys. And radio buys seemed like, oh man, I don't have the budget for that. I can't do a radio buy. But when you buy radio ads on a single day in a single market, it's actually not hugely expensive. And that's essentially what we did. So we bought these radio ads, and I'm going to try and play one for you right now just to see if it works. So let's give this a try. Okay, so you may or may not have been able to hear that, but it's basically saying, hey, this book's coming out. It's going to be great. Meet the author tonight at Kramer Books. And so we had these launch events, and the radio ads were pointing people to the launch events. And so we had one in LA where we had a bunch of people coming from the community of our readers that were in LA. We had multiple events in DC, including one at Kramer Books, which I had a kind of a nice personal story behind, because 20 years ago, when I was trying to make enough money to move to Australia, I used to wait tables at Kramer Books, which is a cafe and a bookstore. And now I was coming back as an author and holding my book launch there. So it was like this nice cycle. It was like this great local story, and people really loved that. We held an event locally, and my kids got involved. There they are, kind of and before they're kind of wearing all the stuff. We did one at a local Barnes and Noble close by. We did another one in New York. We did another one in Boston. And some of you kind of came to some of these events, and it was great. And it was lucky for me because I was launching in January, kind of before the pandemic and everything took over. And so doing something like this obviously is very difficult now. But the idea was, like, the more of these events we did, like, the more we could bring this out to people. A couple of the other tactics that we used were more on the advertising side. So one of the things that was really interesting as an experiment is we put ads into elevators as people were heading up to work, and the ads would promote the fact that the book was available as an ebook at a special discounted price for launch week only. Because the idea was, as people are riding these elevators up to work and they hear about the book, maybe they'll go and pick it up, and therefore we can kind of make the instant sale, and they're about to go and sit down at their computer. So it's not like they're kind of out anywhere else. And then the taxi cab thing, we just kind of tried out because for branding purposes. And I just thought that was kind of cool. So we did a little bit of an experiment with that. We also did a bunch of print advertising. And again, one of the things that people don't realize about print ads is they say, wow, that must be super expensive to get into Wired magazine. But there's a way of buying print advertising through what's called remnant advertising, which means you're buying a slot that is available closer to the time of publication, and you're buying it regionally. So you can get a full page ad in Wired magazine that goes to just subscribers that live in Manhattan, or just subscribers that live in Denver. and you can buy it for a fraction of what you could typically buy it for. And one of the things that you'll see in this presentation is I have lots and lots of stuff, and I don't really share the price of these things. And I know that you're wondering, like, look, how much did some of this stuff cost and how much did you invest? And the reason why I don't share the price behind a lot of this stuff is because sometimes I'm not allowed to. I mean, when we've negotiated the prices, part of the deal is I'm not allowed to tell people what I actually got as the deal for these things, because otherwise I wouldn't get the deal in the first place. And second of all, it varies based on what you're going to do and how you're going to recoup it. And so that's why, apart from our authors who I kind of share this with, like, I don't really talk about the money involved in this stuff. So, but the one thing you should know about me is I don't tend to spend money randomly in tens of thousands of dollars of buckets with something that I know is able to get done for a fraction of that. And so all of this stuff is very deeply negotiated. All of this stuff is probably less than what you think it would be. Digital ads, we did a lot of as well. So we positioned these digital ads mainly in email newsletters. It was really, really valuable to be able to do that. We did a really unique program with Jane Ubel-Meyer called Bedside Reading, where we took our books and put them into high-end hotels where business travelers were going so that people could pick up the book and they could take it with them. And this is kind of a fun photo shoot with a bunch of other authors who were also there. They were authors of fiction books, and then I was the business book. So every month they have a business book, and this has kind of changed. She's evolved the program now, so there's like a digital version of it too. So it's really, really cool stuff. But there was like a great, really unique program that we did. The other thing we did that was very strategic is we applied to a ton of book awards. And the reason we did that, and this was kind of an Idea Press led thing, and Idea Press has been super aggressive on these book awards for all of our authors because they vary in terms of the quality of them. I mean, some of them are easier to win. Some of them are much more difficult. Some of them are much more selective. And so as a marketer, what I was thinking about was not, oh, I'm going to win an award that nobody's heard of. What I was thinking about is how many of these can I rack up so that my bullet point can be winner of 14 international book awards, which is the impressive thing. Sometimes you'll pay attention to what the 14 are, and it's not bullshit. I mean, we actually did win 14 different awards, but the point is we can say this is so many different awards, and therefore the book is really gaining momentum. It's really taking off. We did traditional media, and I'm not a huge believer or advocate in TV media. I know, Laura, I saw a comment from you. You've been hugely successful with that, being on the Today Show. She's one of our authors too. And by the way, a lot of the folks commenting here, they are themselves speakers as part of this summit. So you'll be able to go and listen to their insights directly on their books. And I so appreciate you guys coming and commenting here as well. But we did a bunch of earned media into print, into TV. I also did a lot of podcasts. I believe in podcasts. Podcasts move the needle. Anybody who's done a book launch will tell you podcasts are hugely valuable. Find the podcasts with a host who's got a deep relationship to their audience. Get on the podcast. They recommend your book. You will sell books that way. Hands down, that tactic works for sure. So definitely incorporate podcasts. We did, as part of our ebook strategy, we did lower the price to 99 cents. And this was, again, because we wanted to hit the bestseller list. And so we used lots of different platforms to get it out there. There was affiliate marketing where you can put it into various places, and then you can get lots of sales from people who want to buy the book at that price point. And so this 99-cent deal was part of the launch strategy. So yes, we gave up revenue there, but we were trading for volume, and it's supply and demand. I mean, when it's 99 cents and it starts to climb the charts on Amazon, it starts to get recommended by their algorithms. And anyone says, oh, I haven't really heard of this book, but it's only 99 cents. They take a risk on it, and now you're selling more. We also did a big promotion in airports. So in addition to getting into retail, we also put it into Hudson Airport locations. And that was really, really big for us and for me. And it has been every year. I've done it every year for every version of this book, because business executives see the book in the airport and they then say, oh, I got to bring this guy in to do a keynote. I got to bring this guy in to do a workshop. Now, I know that's changed now because travel's changed and everything's changed during the pandemic. So some of the tactics that I used, I would not use right now. And this is one of them. But when it does return, and I think it will, this will be super valuable for people. So Let me just share to kind of round this out a couple of results and some of the lessons learned. And this is kind of where I want to start to close it because we're getting close to our time here. And like I said, I'll get to a lot of your questions and I'll post answers to them. I know that I did a lot of talking and I wasn't able to get to all of your questions, but I will go into the social media and I'll answer them kind of later today as we're releasing more videos as part of the summit. We hit number 1 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list for ebooks. We also hit number 48 on the USA Today list, which is a combined list of print and ebook. And number 48 doesn't really sound that high, but when you consider that you're up against all of the big fiction books and basically every type of book, so it's not just nonfiction, it's not just business books, it's a decent enough number to get on the list. And so now officially the book was a Wall Street Journal bestseller and Amazon bestseller. It sold over 7,000 copies of the ebook version kind of in that first week. And then the sales continued to accelerate in terms of print sales. I think we probably did close to like 15,000 in that first week. So those are what the numbers look like. And they were good enough to get us to the number 2 business book overall in all of Amazon, number 18 overall in all of Amazon, and number 1 on Barnes & Noble as well. So there were some great results for this campaign. If you're just looking at the numbers, there were some great results for this campaign. And the last thing that we did is we wanted to make sure that this campaign and the book launch wasn't the end. And so it's continued in multiple ways. And so there's a couple things that I've refocused on doing. One is this weekly newsletter that I've been doing for the last 4 years, which you can subscribe to. Just go to nonobvious.com/subscribe. And if you're registered for this conference, you're already going to be getting the email every Thursday. But in addition to sending this email with the most interesting stories of the week, I also turned it into a YouTube show. And so the YouTube show is every Thursday at noon, where I talk about these stories and kind of give my take on what's important and interesting about them. And we will be launching that and turning that into a podcast as well. We took the community that we had, the launch team community we had on Facebook, and we changed the definition of it and turned it into the Non-Obvious Nation community. And then we extended it onto LinkedIn because there's a lot of people who don't want to be on Facebook right now. And so that kind of took off there. We've started doing a bunch of these virtual summits. You're listening to the kickoff talk for one of them, but there's multiple virtual summits that are either already done, such as the Future of Learning, which is on my YouTube channel. So just youtube.com/Rohit Bhargava, or the Future of Marketing, which is coming up with the AMA later this month. And that's all about just marketing, not book marketing specifically, but marketing. We launched an Afterward speaker series where I brought in a bunch of other speakers that I know who are friends of mine, Guy Kawasaki, Dan Heath, Safi Bakal, Francesca Gino, and put together this program for mainly corporations. Continued to post on LinkedIn and launched this guidebook series. So the Non-Obvious Guides are a series of books that are meant to compete with the Dummies Guides. And again, it's just taking the brand wider. I saw Catherine, she's one of our authors. I know other authors of ours are kind of listening in right now. And I, as part of this, wrote my own Non-Obvious Guide during the pandemic. So coming off of the book launch in January, I launched a second book, which I wrote during the pandemic and then launched in April, called The Non-Obvious Guide to Virtual Meetings and Remote Work. And this one is all about kind of what it takes to be effective and efficient now. We've got lots of other ideas planned. We've got trend cards. Like I mentioned, we've got the Non-Obvious Book Award. So if you've written a book that came out or is coming out in 2020, that is eligible for our Non-Obvious Book Awards program. So you can just go to that URL and you can learn more about that program. If you're interested in submitting for that award, you can definitely do that. We are continuing with our foreign rights deals. So we've got a bunch of different deals that have already been published. I'm really happy to announce brand new that we have just organized a deal with Penguin Random House in India to do a new version of the book for India. So lots and lots of more foreign deals on the way. And that is kind of the recap of this entire program. So I so appreciate you guys being part of this. We are coming up right to our 60-minute mark. I know I have not gotten a chance to hit all of your questions, but I will do that. I promise in the social comments, I will get back there. And by the way, we have a full day of content coming your way from this Non-Obvious virtual summit. So sign up if you haven't already at nonobvious.com/bookmarketing. Join us for all of the great content that's coming today and be part of this awesome, awesome event. I can't wait to have you all there, and I hope you enjoy the content and let me know what you think about it. Thank you so much.